Everybody. Welcome to our first Lighter Footprints meeting for the year. Our working groups have been meeting behind the scenes, but this is our first monthly meeting. My name is Lynn Franks, and I'm one of the two co-conveners of Lighter Footprints, the other being Michael Nolan, who you will hear more from later. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that wherever you are in Australia, you are on Aboriginal land that was not ceded. I live on Wurundjeri country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So we had hoped to be able to hold this meeting in person, but due to the uncertainties associated with the COVID pandemic, we moved it online. We are examining the possibility of doing hybrid events, which will have both people in person and online. And we'll keep you informed of our progress, because we'd really like to get together again and see everyone and, back to the guide hall or back to the Marwell Center. Our Facebook page has been shut down as part of the recent dispute between Facebook and the federal government. So this event is not on Facebook Live, but it will be recorded and available on the Lighter Footprints YouTube channel. We're hoping that our page will be back up soon. But in the meantime, if you want to keep in touch with Lighter Footprints, please join the Lighter Footprints Facebook group. And that's a place where Lighter Footprinters can, talk with each other and share ideas. And I'm going to ask Julian if he could put the links to both the YouTube channel and the Facebook group in the chat. So, sorry about that, that's my phone. Okay, so now on to the main event. Tonight we are very pleased to have Simon Holmes as our speaker. Simon is a long-time advocate of renewable energy and community power. He was the founding chair of Hepburn Wind, which built Australia's first community-owned wind farm. He is a senior advisor at Melbourne University's Climate and Energy College, and he also sits on the board of the Smart Energy Council. He really knows his stuff, and we are very lucky to have him with us. So looking forward tonight to hearing about the clean energy transition in the year ahead. Please put any questions that you have for Simon in the chat. We've got a couple of Lighter Footprints committee members who will be monitoring the chat and organizing the questions tonight. So we'll hear Simon, then take questions, and after that we'll have some brief reports from the Lighter Footprints working groups. So now I'm going to hand over to Simon. Please welcome Simon Holmes.
Thank you. It's so weird to see the clapping and not hear anything. I've got my copy of Ross's book. Haven't yet started it, other than the just a few introductory pages, but I'm really looking forward to that. Ross's last book, Superpower, was fantastic. If you haven't read it, let's see if this new one covers the same ground. I'm excited to read it. Let me get my screen shared. Okay, I trust you can see that. Yes. Great. This is going to be quite a ride. I've got quite a few slides to get through. I'll get through them, and then if there's anything that's not clear, I look forward to answering your questions. So I thought I'd change the title as I was finishing off this slide, this presentation today, to At the Tipping Point. I really think that we are at a number of tipping points. We've heard for a long time the phrase tipping point being about the negatives of climate change. I think we're at the tipping point on the positives of our response of climate action. Let me work out how the controls work here. So here's the monthly generation by percentage in the national electricity market over, well, since 2006, so the last 15 years or so. The top line is coal. As you can see, coal coming down. It was nearly 90%. Actually, it's probably just over 90% back in 2006. It's now at 2/3, about 66%, and we'll see it continue to fall as, if you look down below, the turquoise line is renewables, marching up and accelerating, and then gas, the orange line, which initially was rising as Australia started exploiting coal seam gas. For a while we had a glut of it, and we saw an increase in coal seam gas up to around 2015. Then we started exporting it, and you can see that gas has gone down. And I think that's this is quite interesting, because we often hear people say that we're going to need gas as a transition fuel, but as you can see, it's maybe it was a transition fuel, but we've and it does play an important part, but a shrinking part. Here's middle of last year, AEMO, the market operator, put out their projections or a number of scenarios for the energy market over the next 20 years. To the left, so I've taken their numbers and put them in a chart to make them easier to visualize. To that left area is historical, so you can see the coal coming down, gas in the middle, blue is hydro, green is wind, and yellow is solar. And in the scenario they call step change, we see the coal continue to fall at an accelerating rate. We see gas playing a role, but a much smaller role than it traditionally has. Nothing significant happens with hydro. We're not damming any new rivers, but it's wind and solar that provide the lion's share of our energy going forward under the step change scenario. Here's just quickly showing that last 10 years of what's happened in our energy sector. It's solar and wind, the yellow and green, have pushed out a lot of coal and quite a bit of gas. And we've had a small reduction in demand. Some of that may be heavy industry, but some of that will also be energy efficiency. So I want to just run you through quickly how quickly things are accelerating. Back in 2017, so this is only 3.5 years ago, Alan Finkel handed down his report, the Finkel Review, and we waited a whole year as a country for this Finkel Review. It was supposed to answer, project forward for the next 20 years of how we're going. And one of the things that Finkel did is he said, well, we need to get much more serious at projecting what's happening in the energy markets. We need to increase the level of study significantly, and he commissioned, he recommended, and the government followed up his recommendation, to commission the integrated system plan. That was that chart that I showed you just before. We had our second one come out in July of last year, and the integrated system plan is probably the most rigorous study that's ever been done of Australia's energy system. I understand there were 100 person years of work into it, more than $10 million. They have supercomputers crunching all the different scenarios, lots of different simulations of the energy system and the weather system over the next 20 years or so. And what we're finding is that Finkel's view of what would happen just 3.5 years ago, his most aggressive scenarios are now nothing like that. So here's quickly what he had for rooftop solar on each state. I've superimposed a red line on top of where we're going. So just even after 3 years, we are significantly ahead on rooftop solar. Last year, we set an amazing record of 3 gigawatts of rooftop solar added in Australia, which is probably about as much as we did in the first 10 or 12 years of the renewable energy target. In Finkel's 4 scenarios that he showed, there's one scenario in blue here, which is his most aggressive, of how quickly coal would, so this is the amount of coal in the system and how quickly it would fall over the next 30 years. Well, the integrated system plan shows a significant steepening of that chart. So you see coal exiting the system earlier. And I can guarantee you when the next integrated system plan comes out next year, that'll be steeper still, and again and again. What we're consistently seeing is everything that's going to happen in the far future is getting pulled forward as the transition accelerates. For emissions, he had these four, I think, is it 6 different scenarios? The integrated system plan's step change scenario has an emissions reduction trajectory like this. So that's in the electricity sector, but that's the biggest sector of emissions. So you can see just in 3.5 years, our projections of where we'd be have significantly improved. For electricity costs, he thought that prices would go up, except in one scenario where we might be able to get on this downward trajectory. The last 3 years have been amazing. Costs have fallen dramatically in the wholesale sector. Now they'll bounce around, but it just, that bounces around. I think it'll be a long time before they're up towards where Finkel thought they might have been just 3.5 years ago. So point is, things are moving very quickly. And that's the step change scenario I've been showing you. The crazy thing is that even less than a year after the step change scenario came out, it was finalized middle of last year, but most of the modeling was done 6 months or 12 months, back in 2019. We're already well ahead, moving faster than the step change scenario. Now it'll be bumpy. There'll be some years that'll be slower and some will be faster, but we're already well ahead of the most aggressive schedule just 1 year ago. One thing people ask is how we're going to keep the lights on if we have all this variable energy. And the integrated system plan shows us a technology mix under this step change scenario going forward. The dotted red line there, everything below that, all those technologies are dispatchable sources, and everything above are variable sources. So above you've got wind and solar, and below you've got black and brown coal, which are phasing out. You've got gas, which is we're using less and less of it. We've still got the capacity, but the plants will run less than they are right now. But we have increasing amounts of storage. So you can see the black and brown disappearing and the blue wedges, the light blue wedges growing. So it'll be storage that allows us to keep the lights on as the coal and gas retire. Thought I would try to introduce this way of looking at the system. There's two kinds of energy really that we consume. There's energy that's fresh, that comes straight from the generators, and then there's energy that's frozen, energy that we put in batteries or pumped hydro or some kind of storage, and we pull it out when that famous when the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine. That's when we need to pull our energy out of the freezer, out of the storage. And what's amazing, and I think it's quite unintuitive for a lot of us, is we actually get to use most of our energy fresh as we go forward, with only a small amount that needs to come out of storage. So it's not that we need to have batteries that hold all the energy for the entire network for a whole week, because we have very consistent. The sun comes up. The sun comes up. The wind blows. And we do have a significant amount of hydro, and between all of them, we get a lot of our energy fresh, and only a little bit needs to come from storage, and only you'll see only very little is required over the next 5 years, and there's quite a bit of evidence that the market is moving faster than these projections. So really, no one in the energy sector is particularly concerned about the reliability of the grid or the task ahead of us. I think it'd be fair to say. I just wanted to get this show you here what the usage of a gas power station. This is the largest gas peaker in New South Wales. It's called Colongra. It's owned by Snowy Hydro. And I don't know if you can see, but there are some orange bars down the bottom. There's not many of them. Almost all of this chart is white, meaning that the generators weren't going, but just it was 0.6% of last year this power station ran. The point I want to make here is even when you've got gas stations sitting around, if they in general, they will not run much. They run when there's the network outage or there is a strange confluence of outages, or all that situation when the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine. When we do use gas at the moment, what we're increasingly seeing is that the capacity factors or the utilization of these gas plants come down. So I'm less concerned when people say they want to build a new gas plant. I'm less concerned because it actually will hardly ever run. And when they hardly ever run, there's hardly any emissions. So things are moving really well in the electricity sector, and that's the longest bar at the bottom then. It's just comparing all the different sectors of our economy. You can see, yeah, electricity, we're doing really well. We are past the tipping point. I am very confident that from here on in, you know, I guess the ship is sailing, and it's a very difficult to turn around tanker. I think we can be quite confident that the electricity sector will continue to decarbonise. But the other sectors of the economy are moving much slower. Direct combustion, that's heating, gas in our houses for heating or hot water, gas in industry for again for heat loads, transport, so it's significantly oil, but also well, it's petrol, diesel, aviation, gas. They're the main uses in transport. I'm going to skip agriculture in a second. Fugitives are fugitive emissions. It's a funny name, but that's the emissions that come off from gas, that leaks from gas, or is sometimes deliberately released in the extraction of gas, and coal, just scratching the surface of a coal mine or mining underground. Methane comes out and goes straight into the atmosphere. So that's a significant area, but that will clearly go away as the world's usage of fossil fuels goes away. And industrial, as we move to, you know, this is where the technology investments are happening to learn how to make green steel or green cement or plastics out of materials other than oil. I marked all the ones red of that are areas that we know what we need to do in order to reduce emissions significantly. Blue, I think, you know, my understanding is that we still need a fair bit of work to work out how we're going to attack those sectors. But as you can see, the vast majority of what we need to do, we know how to do it, and it's pretty simple. We just electrify everything, and we deploy renewables to produce the electricity. So how are we going on emissions? This is excluding the land sector, and there's a bunch of reasons to exclude the land sector. The methodology is not widely trusted. The methodologies change over time, and really aren't a reflection of what we of the efforts we make. They're more, in Australia's case, more of an issue on how much land clearing we're doing. So if we look at actually what the rest of the economy is doing, we're not doing very well at reducing emissions. The blue sector, sorry, I used the colours of the Labor years in red, the coalition's current stint in blue, and then the purple dots are what the coalition is predicting going forward. So that's Australia's emissions projections over the next decade, over this decade that we're in. That is nothing like a trajectory down to net zero by 2050. In fact, Ketan Joshi, who many of you might have read articles in either The Guardian or Renewable Economy, he worked out it'd be about the year 2300 that Australia decarbonises at this rate. So we're not going to hit Paris in a canter. We're not even, you know, the government's own numbers show that we're not even close. So thermal coal. One of the points that I want to make, that I try to make often, is that the coal sector, most of our coal, I think it's it would be 80% of our coal is exported in Australia, and it's not really our choice. I mean, the real decisions on when our coal sector finish are not being made in Canberra. The real decisions are being made in in Tokyo or Seoul or Beijing primarily. And as you can see, about a third of our coal goes to Japan, and they have a net zero by 2050 target. They're looking at substituting some of their coal with ammonia rather, and they're also looking at significant offshore wind investments, and they're restarting a bunch of their nuclear power stations that caused a big, when they shut them down after Fukushima, they increased their exports significantly, so their imports of coal. Japan, that purple section will phase out, irrespective of what our National Party politicians want. And the same with China, and the same with Taiwan, the same with South Korea, all of which have pledged to reduce and then eliminate their coal. A lot of Australian media is very concerned that what will this do to our economy if people are no longer buying our coal. And I just want to focus on thermal coal, because that's the first that will go, and that's the coal that's used to make electricity. Thermal coal is only 5.5% of our export dollars. The way the media carry on about it, you'd think it was about a third or a half. So just yeah, keep in mind it's a significant sector, but it's a smaller sector than, say, smaller sector than education, smaller than tourism when the economy's working, and in bad years of prices, it's smaller than other sectors like gold. We often hear about, very concerned about what happens to all the coal workers. Again, it's not really our decision when they stop being a coal market. That decision's already been made that they're phasing down. But it's important to put into perspective that the coal sector, the thermal coal sector, no, I think this is the entire coal sector I've got here, is no bigger than the motor vehicle sector was, a sector that we threw on the scrap heap. And it's a fraction the size of other industries. So we can, it's small enough that we can look after every worker if we want to, in a way that we never did for other industries. We never did for those who worked at checkouts who were automated in the last few years, or those who worked at 1 hour photo booths 10 years ago who lost their jobs when we all went to digital cameras. None of those industries got any assistance, but we can do that for coal. It's a small sector. We can retrain and assist these workers. There's no reason why Australia can't provide a just transition. Jobs are not a reason for us to try to slow down the end of the coal, our coal industry. I think this is good news. An article in the AFR today showing that a significant number of it's five coal power stations are going to be running at a loss by 2025 if they're not already running at a loss. And so we're going to see some of those coal closures. I showed you the coal reduction over power reduction over this decade. I think many in the industry, including Kerry Schott, who runs the Energy Security Board, believe that things are going to move much faster than the official projections. Some bright things on the horizon. Some mega projects of an incredible scale, the likes of which we've never seen before. Here's the Sun Cable project. This is the Mike Cannon-Brookes and Twiggy Forrest backed plan to build the world's biggest solar farm near Tennant Creek, and the biggest battery farm right next to it, with them sending the power about 750 kilometres up to Darwin, and then through a 3,700 kilometre cable to Singapore. The project would provide about 20% of Singapore's power and give them, Singapore is always concerned about its energy security. It likes to have a diversity of sources, and this is one extra source that they can add to the mix to give them greater security. So it's an audacious project. It'd be, probably wouldn't, I mean, they've got ships out there surveying the route, but I don't think they're planning to lay any cable to the end of the decade. is last I heard on the project, but of a massive scale. Another project over, this one's over in Western Australia. It's called the Asian Renewable Energy Hub, and it is the size of it would make it the largest power station in the world. So right now, the largest power station is Three Gorges Dam, which I think is 22 gigawatt project. This one is, I think, 26 gigawatts. So it's larger than Three Gorges. And down the bottom there, that's some hours through a day. So, you know, 1 a.m. all the way through to midnight would be the one after 23 there. The blue bars are the average wind power at that site, and the red bars are the solar power at that site. So with the right mix of they've got a very diurnal wind pattern, and obviously solar is the opposite of that. So put the two together, and they can use just a little bit of storage if they want to chop the top off and put it in to fill in the gaps. But they can have very reliable power out there with wind and solar. They're actually going to use the renewable energy to feed electrolyzers. They've got a desalination plant feeding electrolyzers, and then with nitrogen from an air separation unit through the Haber-Bosch process, making green ammonia, and with these offshore floating refueling buoys, there'll be energy ships taking the product up to Japan, and Japan has got a very aggressive plan to start importing green ammonia. They want it, and this project intends to provide it. Often asked about the Star of the South project. This is a massive 2 gigawatt wind farm. So it would be 4 times bigger than any wind farm in Australia. It would sit out in Bass Strait using these mammoth turbines that are probably, well, by the time the project would be built, which would be probably be the 2025 to in the 2020, the back half of this decade, the wind turbines will be 2 to 3 times bigger than the biggest we have right now, if the project goes ahead. So far, we don't have any offshore wind in Australia, and offshore wind is going. The market is going really well, growing very quickly in Europe and the UK. It's a centerpiece of their 10-point plan for decarbonisation. Germany, Denmark, France, even Poland have aggressive offshore programs. These projects make a lot of sense in Europe, where there's a lack of land. They have so far struggled in Australia because it's so much cheaper for us to build onshore than it is offshore. So give you an example, the cheapest wind farm in the UK just sold, was set up on a contract of £40 per megawatt hour. That's equivalent to $70 a megawatt hour. We can build wind farms in Australia for half that cost onshore. So we're really waiting for a step change in the cost of offshore wind before we're going to see some in Australia. I think we eventually will, because the winds we have down in Bass Strait are absolutely world class. But it'll be a while before the economics stack up there. But it's great that there are, the Star of the South project is surveying the area, getting the permits, making sure that that we have the regulatory systems that allow this kind of project. So yeah, hope it happens, but it's going to be harder to get it happening in Australia than it is in Europe, because we just have such phenomenally vast plains that are windswept, that are accessible to wind developers. One of the things I'm really excited about is electric vehicles are at the tipping point. I've got 2 cars I want to show you here. One, look, I'm not a car nut, so people are going to have issues with me comparing these cars. But looking for more comparable cars. But a Corolla, Toyota Corolla Sport is a good entry-level car for many, and I'm putting it up against the MG ZS, which is currently the the lowest cost electric car in Australia, as far as I know. Just came into the market at the end of last year. It's a bigger car. It's an SUV, I think a mini SUV platform, but it's really shaken things up a bit with its price point. Let me show you. RACV put out this the total cost of ownership calculator. I just grabbed this page and looking at the Toyota Corolla Ascent, and I used the same methodology to plug in. They haven't done an analysis of the MG yet, but I used the same methodology. And just comparing the two vehicles, you can see the MG still quite a premium to buy the car. Some, what's that, $15,000 more to buy the car. Thankfully, when RACV works on a 5-year life, assuming you drive the car for 15,000 kilometers a year and sell it after 5 years. That's the sort of default scenario. So they assume a higher resale on the MG. As you can see, it costs a bit more each week to have the car, 156 versus 119. That's including interest, insurance, depreciation, and rego. But it's the running cost where the car comes in as much more affordable, 6 cents a kilometre, including the fuel, electricity, tyres and servicing. So about 6 cents a kilometre for the EV versus 16 for the Corolla. Over the cost, the total cost per kilometre over the 5-year life, you'll see that the MG is slightly more expensive than the Corolla, just about 3 cents more. Sometime this year or next, and look, these cars are perhaps not, some would say the MG is a fancier car or than a Corolla, and I'm being rough, putting up against the MG up against the Corolla. We'll see. But sometime this year or next, the total cost of ownership for an EV for Joe Public is going to be it's going to be cheaper to be in an EV. I've heard from fleet managers, including the ACT government, that they are finding with their particular purchasing power and the tax handling and leasing arrangements, they're already finding that in the ACT EVs are cheaper, and that 50% of the ACT's car fleet will be EV by June 30. And within 18 months, I think there'll be all EVs for their light vehicle fleet. So we're at the tipping point here. What the ACT's done is pretty amazing. They have they are offering $15,000 interest-free loans to people wanting to buy an EV. And just having that extra time, a chunk of the purchase price interest-free, closes that gap entirely. And it takes away that shock of that extra $15,000 that it costs for the car up front. So with some slight tweaking and incentives that cost very little in this low interest environment, we really could have EVs being accessible to all purchasers of new cars, not just those who are lucky enough to be able to buy EVs at present. So big news over the last year, I think, was all the countries that are signing up for net zero targets. 121 countries. The US has said it's about to, and China has signed up for 2060 net zero by 2060. So we've got countries going net zero. We've got businesses are going renewables, and many are going net zero. This is the RE100 group of companies. I think it's now up to over 250 companies have signed up to be 100% renewable. Our states are going net zero and renewables. Every state has a 2050, or in the case of ACT, 2045. And in renewables, actually, I should update this. South Australia said that they want to get, they said last year they want to get to 100% renewables, and they said just in December that they want to get to 500% renewables. So produce enough for themselves and 4 times as much again for export. Tasmania, another Liberal state, 200%. And I don't know if anyone, if you caught West Australian election, the there's a real fight between Labor and Liberal Party over who's got the most aggressive renewables party, and at the moment renewables policy, and at the moment the Liberals have the strongest one. So there's really at the state level, it's bipartisan support for net zero and and full transition to renewables. Even Poland is moving with the times. So they've said Poland has been the country that's dragged Europe back and it's been the Australia of Europe. It's tried to jeopardize or tried to frustrate the climate talks in Europe for the longest time. They're finally getting with the program and committing to significantly to halve their coal by 2030 and halve it again by 2040. And they're talking about a just transition for their coal workers, putting $20 billion aside to transform their coal regions. Phenomenal when Poland is more progressive on energy than Australia. So everyone's getting with the program except these two. Why? Well, I think it's these two. So what can we do? I put this slide up for you guys when I spoke last year, and I've been still thinking about it all year. It really hit me when I first read it, that the climate crisis is not going to be solved by our own personal sacrifice. It's going to be solved by electing the right people, and passing the right laws and drafting the right regulations and signing the right treaties and respecting those treaties already signed. So for me, what do I think the tasks are for 2021? Well, I think we've got to keep the pressure on the electricity sector transition. It's happening. Shouldn't let off there, but it's kind of locked in. But we need to get policies in to transform the transport sector, starting with EVs. We want people to be buying the next car to be an EV rather than buying a petrol car that's going to have to be on the road for the next 20 years burning petrol. We need policy to help close that last little gap to get people in EVs. We need to start phasing out domestic and business gas that can be. In Victoria, you can still get incentives. You still get energy efficiency certificates for installing gas, and builders have told me that it's difficult to install heat pumps, that it's much easier for the Green Star rating for builders to install gas heaters. We've got to put an end to that. And those small regulations are things that I think we can all advocate for. And we've got to get our governments talking seriously about coal closures, the same way that Poland and Germany and other countries and the UK is committed to all coal closed by 2025. And it looks like it'll probably be this year or next. We've got to start having policies to explicitly talk about coal closures. But I think that we often say, look, I think we all feel that it's somehow unseemly to be political, but I want to be political here. We need a new government. If we want to take advantage of these opportunities for Australia, and if we want to not be the pariah, if we want to not be the country at the back of the pack, it's pretty clear that the current government's not going to be able to deliver. So we've got an election coming up at some point. And I think I implore every able-bodied person to consider how they can help ensure that we have a change. And if you think elections don't matter, this is my last slide. If you think elections don't matter, yeah, not long ago I thought Biden was a little bit unimpressive on. Take your mind back to a year ago when it was when Biden was touted as the next potential, as the candidate for the Democrats. It was a little disappointing because he just didn't seem like a guy with ambition. But look what he's done with a great team around him, including a great pick, John Kerry. The US is back in the Paris Agreement. They're back in. That happened last week. They're committed to taking their electricity sector to zero emissions by 2035. They're committed to going net zero by 2050. And they're even holding serious talks with Europe, with the UK, other countries about setting up carbon border tariffs. And if that happens, there will be effectively, the world will have a free trade zone of countries that take emissions seriously, and those who don't, like Australia, will be outside that free trade zone. And they're now talking about it very seriously in Europe and the UK. So if you think elections don't matter, please take a look at this one. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Look, wonderful summary, and the conclusion towards the end there of how much the politics matter, which is very dear to a lot of people's heart on this call. So what we're going to do now, I've seen a lot of questions come in, some really good questions. We've got a bit of time. We've probably got 20 minutes or so that's fantastic. Thanks everyone for putting in the questions. I'm going to hand over to David Strang and to Ken Parker to bring those questions out of the chat room up to Simon, and Simon, if you could have a stab as best you can at what comes through from that. So over to you, Ken and David.
Thanks, Michael.
You're on mute.
Thanks. Yes, there's been a huge onslaught of questions, which is great, and David and I will alternate our way through a selection of questions. And we do apologise. I don't think it'll be humanly possible to get through every question, but we'll try and pick out the ones that give the typical questions to get the flavour of most of the questions here. I'll just start with one from Rob Brown. The optimism from the projections from coal's decline is dampened when we consider the determination by Canavan and his ilk for new coal or gas at taxpayers' expense. How can we block those actions?
I don't think they're going to happen. I really don't think there's no hope in hell for the coal to happen. It would take a good 2 or 3 electoral cycles to build one. It probably wouldn't last all the legal challenges, and the economics don't stack up. I don't think government has the power to subsidise something. I mean, no one wants to build one. Don't worry about new coal being built. It's just not going to happen. Gas, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few more gas peakers built. But as I tried to show with that image of that chart from the Colongra power station, where if one's built, it's hardly going to run. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry too much about new coal or gas. Yeah, don't think there's really not many politicians with any power who believe there's any hope in hell on that.
Great, thanks, Simon. David?
This is a thorny one because it comes from Julie Grint, who says Australia's biggest contribution to global CO2 and methane emissions are our coal and LNP exports. Why aren't we talking about exiting coal and LNP exports?
Yeah. Look, there are different opinions on this. Where I go is on this is that actually the people who have the strongest say in our coal exports are those who buy the coal, and the activists and frankly just business folk who see the fundamentals of the cost structures have allowed the Japanese government to say that they're going to phase down coal, and South Korea. China's not going to be using much of our coal. So yeah, we had a visitor from the German energy agency at my group at Melbourne University came and visited in late 2019, and the point she made to us, she said that coal will leave Australia before Australia leaves coal. That the market will dry up, and we can fight that, but in my mind, and if that's what you want to fight, I'm not going to stop you. But fighting for the end of gas hot water heaters and gas space heaters, or fighting for a rapid transition to, the UK has said no more internal combustion engine vehicles can be sold new from 2030 onwards. And we had, was it Jaguar has now said that it's going to stop petrol vehicles. It's Jaguar. It's going to stop selling petrol vehicles in 2025. Just takes a little bit of leadership to get those regulations in. And I think we the limited time that we've all got to spend on this issue, I would implore you to spend on changing the policies that accelerate the transition, because I think it's going to be very hard, or go and support the activists in the countries that buy our coal to make sure that they stop buying it. That's sort of more of the approach I take. But each to their own on how they want to act, be active in this area.
Great, thanks, Simon. Now, Kathleen Davies is asking, regarding decarbonising transport, how do you think the recently released future fuel strategy is helping accelerate the transition, or not?
It's not. This is Angus Taylor's. Angus Taylor promised in early 2019 to release a electric vehicle strategy. The department had finished a document a year ago. It bounced back and forth between the department and Angus's office all year. Finally came out in January, and it's not the EV strategy. It's called the Future Fuels Strategy, or FFS, which those who see that acronym on social media all the time know that FFS means something else. It's a joke of a document, really. It basically is trying to say the government's not going to do anything significant on electrification. It's saying that it's encouraging people to move towards hybrids, not electric vehicles, and it does so with some really dodgy modelling. They have some modelling that shows that hybrid cars are better, reduce more carbon at a cheaper cost than EVs. But in that modelling, they assume the car only lasts 5 years and then the car disappears. So if you torture the numbers enough, they'll confess to anything, and that's what Angus has done. He's tortured the numbers to try to convince people not to go EVs. And this is at a time when almost every other country. I saw the other day, Kazakhstan has a more progressive. Kazakhstan have incentives to get into EVs and build electric charge points all around the country. You can go to almost any country in the world, certainly in the OECD, and they've got a progressive electrification strategy. And we have this document that we've waited 2 years for, and it does nothing of any real significance other than try to talk people out of going to EVs. It's very strange. Very strange. I mean, we've got we've lost 2 refineries in the last, or 3 years, 2 or 3 refineries in the last few years. Another one announced last week. Another one's on its last legs. We've got an opportunity to get off imported fuel and all of us be zipping around with Australian, locally produced clean fuel, and we've got an energy minister who's trying to discourage that.
Great, thanks, Simon. David?
So, a couple of questions on community energy. Firstly, do you think that Indie MP's Helen Haines community energy proposals can help fast-track renewables? And given the recent announcement today, or today's announcement about community batteries, do you think community batteries have a significant role to play in the transition?
Yeah, thanks, David. Good questions. Firstly, I really applaud Helen Haines' leadership here. For those who haven't seen it, she's really made it a big focus of hers to boost the profile of community energy projects, and she's proposed a range of policies that make it easier for communities to invest and build their own community renewable projects, and also to ensure that some of the benefits or some of the income from those projects stay in the community. So, renewable projects are being built all over the country, we've got to make sure that benefits stay in the community. So make sure that locals get to build the projects, not just backpackers, which has happened in some communities, and make sure that significant community funds are set up, as some wind farms have done. So Helen's doing a great job there, and I think it's also a great example of what a strong community-minded independent can do. Before that seat went independent, it was Sophie Mirabella was the MP behind that seat. No way that she would have got up there and proposed any progressive policy on anything, really. You got a backbencher or an independent that really is trying to make a difference. So hats off to her. Community battery is an interesting idea. So rather than it's pretty expensive to have a battery in your house, and the economics, we're like solar panels in 2005. The number, it didn't really stack up economically, but it was fun, and those who valued the benefits, I guess, or the environmental angle would do it, but they didn't really make financial sense until a few years later. Batteries are at that point right now where it's really hard to make the economics work, and in fact most people won't. But we're going to get there. What this community battery idea, though, is if we build bigger batteries and sell shares in them or rent shares in them to people, then we can access the benefits of batteries without having to put one in our garage, and at a cheaper cost than if we all bought our own small batteries. So there's a bunch of trials. Western Australia's done a few. New South Wales is trialling some, and Lily D'Ambrosio, the Energy Minister, announced a big program today to roll out community batteries. I guess really it's a trial of them. I think it has some. It's potentially pretty interesting. I was heavily involved in the Hepburn Community Wind Project, the 2-turbine wind farm up in Daylesford. 2 turbines that generate power equivalent to 2,000 homes. And there are quite a few other community energy projects around the country, mainly solar. Solar projects are much easier to get up than wind, and you can do them at a smaller scale, and you can do them in more versatile environments. I would love to see some people get their heads together and see if we can get a community solar farm up in Boroondara. I think that would be, it was a fantastic thing up in Daylesford where I did the project. Just the environmental side of the project is great, but the social bit of everyone coming together and with a common cause, building some significant asset that's bigger than any of us could do on our own, had a lot of other benefits in them. I was up in Daylesford on the weekend, and I plugged into the EV charger in the main street, which was installed by the wind farm and power supplied by the wind farm. It's a wonderful feeling to plug an EV into power an EV by the wind farm that the community built.
Thanks, Simon. Look, I'm prompted to ask you, with regard to batteries, given that, as you've just been saying, that there is the potential for a much bigger move to EVs, as in some parts of the world already, I'm concerned about making good use of batteries. I know they've got a lot of good uses, but in my mind, it seems to me if we can get a lot of people buying electric vehicles, that those batteries shouldn't just be car batteries, they should be powering the homes. What do you think about the idea that we don't actually buy batteries for our homes? We have our electric vehicle, we use it for the car when we want to, and we use it for the house when it's at home.
Yeah, there's a lot of people are very interested in the idea of that's called vehicle to grid. So you get home at the end of the day, and your car would be configured to say, look, I'm prepared to give some of the charge of the car, not all of it, you don't want to get up in the morning and have the car flat, but it gives some of the charge from the car to the house. Maybe you might have solar panels at work one day, and you know, they allow people to charge at work, and you can come home and use the power. But when there's a peak power event, your car could be paid for coming and providing power. There's some issues to work out with that. All the standards of how the power goes in, and I guess we had to go through all the standards with solar inverters on houses. There is concern that when you cycle the car battery, you age it, and you want to make sure that you're not prematurely aging your car. But we're now getting to the point where Tesla claim that their next generation of batteries will deliver 1 million miles of range. So the cars, you know, most cars are going to fall apart long before their batteries do. So yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. Managed charging of the cars is where a lot of energy folk are more interested in that bit. So you plug your car in, but it wouldn't charge straight away. It would charge just when the power is really cheap. So delegate it to some company to keep your car mostly charged at the cheapest possible price. And I met a company a couple of years ago that when a car battery has reached its end of life, it's actually still got about 80% of its capabilities left. So there are companies that are looking at taking those secondhand batteries, putting them in racking systems in warehouses, and providing a second life for these batteries. And you might get 10 years in the car, and then might get another 10 years in a warehouse before it eventually gets back, recycled, or its actual end of life. Fantastic.
You should see all the old car batteries that I'm using to power things in my home. But more relevantly, I would just back that up by saying that they've already had taxis that have covered over 1.5 million kilometres on the one battery. So
that's amazing. Yeah,
what you're saying is right on track. David,
if we have time for one more. You talked about policy changes. If you could pick one for at the federal level, one at the state level, and one at the council level, if it's not too difficult, what would be the top policy changes? I think I know the one at the federal level, but I'd just be interested.
Well, federal level would be to have a science-based emissions reduction target. And Zali Steggall, again, there's a bit of an independent thread going through everything I say. I'm just really impressed with how these independents, when they're, they've got the motivation of both standing up for their community, but they also want to make change and not be held back by party structures. But Zali Steggall's program is based on the UK's policy systems, where you start with the science, working out what the emissions trajectory has got to be, and then from there you go and look at what's the best processes to get those emissions reduction across the economy. So I'd start with there. At the state level, Victoria's well ahead of the other states in the carbon in the laws. It actually has a system pretty much based on the UK model, and has it's about to release its revised, I think it's 2025 target pretty soon. But I would we haven't got going on transport at all in Victoria for transport emissions. So I'd want us to focus there and have also have a coal phase out policy in Victoria. No one politically wants to talk about it. They feel it's an issue that you shouldn't talk about because you'll scare people. I think it's about time we started talking about it. In Germany, they ran they had a coal commission, which had there were I think there were 20 members on this commission. They had people from unions, power companies, local politics, social services, people from all the stakeholders on coal, and they sat down and they worked out. It's a program to phase out coal by 2038. They're going to review. I think next year they review to see if they can pull it forward another 3 years to 2035. I bet they'll pull it forward again and again. But they came together and then formed an agreement. And I really like the way that Audrey Zibelman, who ran the energy market operator until December last year, she put it this way, that she said we can have an orderly transition, or we can have a chaotic disruption, right? And with both of them, we start in the same place, being here, and we end in the same place, being no coal. But with the chaotic disruption, people get hurt, and we have you have blackouts, perhaps. You have people being thrown on the scrap heap with no job training or no transition into new jobs or benefits. But if we have a managed transition, we can do this as a society. It's not a huge problem. It's only a huge problem if we don't plan. So I'd want to have a coal commission in Victoria, or even federally. At the local level, I guess I haven't thought enough about it, but I would like to see a community, some community solar farms, and maybe if we saw if we saw a lot more electric vehicle chargers around, maybe it would just be more front of people's mind. I heard about a council in the UK recently that if you have an electric car, if you bought one, you can call the council and they will install for free a charging outlet in the closest lamppost to your home. So they'll make it easy for you. And then so gradually the neighbourhoods are filling up with these electric car chargers.
Thanks, Simon. Mick, I think we haven't quite exhausted our time. Just one or two more questions, if that's okay.
Sure, we've got time, Ken.
Great, thanks, Michael. Well, look, our co-convener Lynn of Lighter Footprints, Lynn Franks, has put some questions in there, so I mightn't get into trouble if I don't ask at least one of them. And this is a little bit off to the side in some senses, Simon, so I'll leave it up to you how deep you go. But Lynn Franks is asking, what do you think of the recent renewed call for nuclear? And I know that Ziggy has sort of turned around, and even though I did some research there myself, I think the day of nuclear might have gone. But look, what do you think, Simon?
I've spent a lot of time looking at it over the last few years. So that we had the South Australia Nuclear Fuel Cycle Royal Commission in, I think, 2016. And then in 2019 and 20, we had 3 reviews, a federal parliamentary review, New South Wales and Victoria. And I gave testimony to the federal and Victorian one. Basically, I mean, my take is that the era of new nuclear is or the window of opportunity for Australia has closed. We almost had a nuclear power plant. I don't know if people know, but we the foundation area was cleared for one in Jarvis Bay, and there was SEZV had a proposal for one on French Island, I believe. But then we discovered gas, and we learned how to burn brown coal. So much higher emissions, but it was cheaper, and that pretty much killed. That was the window when most nuclear in the world was built in the 70s and 80s. But the big problem that nuclear has at the moment is that the large old designs, sort of gigawatt scale machines, are incredibly expensive and take a long time to build. So there are, I think, only 4 projects between North America and Europe that are under construction right now. They're all significantly over time, and I mean, as you know, like more than 10 years late for one of them, and over budget. In some cases, 3 times as much as what they originally. So that scale is we're not, and it's probably too big for our market anyway. There's a lot of talk about so-called small modular reactors or advanced reactors. There's some would call these paper reactors, by meaning that they exist on paper. None of them are likely to come online in the next decade. So, during one of the inquiries, I think it was the one of the nuclear regulatory bodies in Australia said that it would probably take about 15 years from now if we decided we'd do it now. Well, as you saw in those charts before, in 15 years' time, the energy transition in Australia in the electricity sector is basically over. So too expensive, too slow for the old generation, and the new generation don't exist yet. By the time they do, we're probably already done.
Great, thanks, Simon. David, have you got another one there?
Yes, I do, and it's actually, should get to it because it was the first question, I think. It was, what do you see as the role of hydrogen? And I think it's probably more the role of hydrogen in our market rather than for export, but feel free to address both.
Yeah, okay, so the people argue a lot about hydrogen, and a lot of it comes around to a misunderstanding of, well, early proponents of hydrogen would painted a picture that hydrogen was a fuel that would make cars go clean, that it was all around hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And pretty much everyone now accepts that in the race, the race between hydrogen fuel cells and battery vehicles have won hands down, the same way that VHS beat Betamax. And you know, there are people now who will still tell you that Betamax was a better standard and had all sorts of advantages, but at the end of the day, well, EVs are out there selling like hotcakes around the world, and they turn out to be much more efficient, cheaper to run, and quite maybe a bit of it takes a while for people to get their head around this, but most EV drivers find it more convenient to charge at home, even slow charging at home, than going to a fueling station and filling up. That actually it's more convenient to have an EV than it is, which it used to be the argument the other way around, that people would want to charge their fill their hydrogen tank up in 3 minutes rather than wait all night for their car to charge. So I think don't think of hydrogen as something that powers cars. It may have a market in trucks for long haul, maybe trains, but both of those use cases, batteries are starting to impinge on those opportunities. It's almost certainly, hydrogen's almost certainly got a role in aviation and shipping. Batteries will be, there'll be ferries, there already are ferries that run on batteries, but I think we're unlikely to see a battery-powered ship that takes a load of something to Japan. Quite likely, though, we'll have an ammonia carrier, which will use some of its cargo to power the ship. But the biggest uses in Australia of hydrogen are probably going to be for making steel or ammonia for fertilizers, or industrial processes that use a lot of coal or gas at the moment. We're going to switch them out for hydrogen.
Great. Mick, how do you...
Yeah, I think that's brought us up to about time. Thank you, Ken and David and Simon. That's fantastic. Look, there's so much to digest there from Simon. It's fantastic to have you again, Simon. I think you're done this a few times now for us. I think early last year and May as well. So it's just so rich in the content. It's hopefully we are at the tipping point. And you also mentioned the $20 billion that Poland's putting into the just transition for workers, which I think Chris Bowen is really is taking that up now that he's the opposition environmental minister, is all about being honest with workers and what we do. So I think that's a really important topic you've touched on there. It's pretty shameful that Kazakhstan is doing a better job on EVs. It just goes to show the power behind the various lobby groups. Some of it's quite opaque. So I think, we've talked about policies and regulations and politicians. Certainly, there's things that we can do. You've mentioned gas, hot water and reverse cycle air conditioner. We can really get behind that here in Victoria in particular, where 50% of our gas is used in the residential sector. You mentioned a solar PV in Boroondara. That's got me thinking, and hopefully it's got a lot of people thinking what we can come up with there. So keep your eyes peeled, everyone. If you're in Boroondara, some of you aren't, but if you're in Tasmania or in Jar Jar Wurrung, wherever you are, let's see if we can get more community projects up and get people behind them, and that motivates them into action, and then the people get power from that. And you mentioned EV chargers, and certainly looks like the numbers are sort of going to be very compelling for council fleets and for corporate fleets that do the 15,000, 20,000, 25,000 Ks a year. So we need to be fronting up to our councillors and getting charging points done and asking them why they're not spending council rates in the best possible way by moving to EV fleets. What was running, so look, unbelievable. What's been also running through my mind as you were talking, Simon, is we've got a lot of channels now. So this will go up onto YouTube after about 3 days, I think 3 or 4 days, we'll have it up on YouTube, the Lighter Footprints YouTube channel. We're in a bit of a flux with Facebook, as Lynn mentioned. And we will have the links on a blog on this talk on the Lighter Footprints website in, I think, sort of a day. No, it probably won't be a day, but sometime soon. It might be Monday. So keep your eye out for that as well. There's so many channels, Facebook, and we do need to, in Lighter Footprints, get our minds around what this Facebook thing means. And we might do a pivot to more Twitter, more Instagram. There's certainly the Facebook group, the Lighter Footprints Facebook group continues. So yell out if you've got a question on that. Anyone in the audience on where to go, drop us an email. Go onto our website and find the admin address and drop us an email. I just want to take now a moment. We're going to do a visual appreciation to Simon, because the clapping doesn't work that well. But if we can all put our hands together, or a big hurrah for Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And look, I'll be definitely having a look at the video when we can get a hold of that, and because there's so much to think about. Fantastic. Look, what we're going to do now is move into what is, post the talk from Simon. We're going to be hearing in a moment from our working groups. So hopefully people are motivated in early 2021 to take action. And what we and Julian's going to put in the chat the link on the website, the Lighter Footprints website, which is www.lighterfootprints.org. If you go to a tab there called Take Action, if you're not a member or not on our mailing list, click on the Take Action tab and you'll see a whole lot of working groups. You can scroll down to the right-hand side of that Take Action tab, find the part where you fill in your details, and you'll get on our fortnightly newsletter. And hopefully a lot of you, and some of you, or hopefully most of you, are now motivated to indicate some interest in joining one of the groups. And that's what we're going to do in a moment, is hear from each of the group conveners or people representing the group tonight, just for 1 minute, just to give you a flavour of what they do. And we'll do that in a moment. So
Mick, can I just jump in and say that page on Take Action, that's for you to volunteer. So whether you're on receive our newsletter or not, on the Take Action page, you can indicate a willingness to volunteer. That won't put you into the newsletter. The newsletter you have to do from the front page of the homepage of the website.
Okay. All right. So the Take Action puts you into the volunteering. or indicates your expression of interest to the group, you have to go to the front page to volunteer. Wonderful. Now we're going to move in. I'm just going to do a quick plug. Also on our Lighter Footprints website is a donate button. Quick plug. We are doing better than we used to with our funds, and now that we're online, it's just made things a little bit harder. But there's been quite a few donations come through, and we really appreciate that. And anyone that can go in and put some money as a one-off, as a regular donation, much appreciated. All right, I'm going to hand over. We're going to go through this fairly quickly in about a minute each. I'm going to hand over to Ray, who heads up the letter writers, which is absolutely going gangbusters at the moment. So I'll hand over to you, Ray.
Thanks very much, Mick. Thanks, Simon. Fantastic presentation. And somebody once said that the pen is mightier than the sword. And if you can't get out there and demonstrate in the streets, or you might, but you'd like to write letters, then maybe this group is for you. So far this year, we've had 157 letters published, which is nearly 3 times where we were at last year. 2/3 of those letters have been climate-related letters, which is terrific. And of our 40+ writers in the group, 26 have been published already this year, which is terrific to see. And a newspaper breakdown, you can see that most of our I need to get rid of this, do I maybe? Most of our letters have been published in The Age, and the Australian Financial Review is very supportive as well. But also we write not just to the main Melbourne papers, but also to interstate and regional newspapers, including the other state capital cities. And you can see that most of our letters have been published there, 60 altogether in interstate or regional papers. So that's going really well. So far this year, we've had 5 lead letters. So that's the first letter on the page, often with a photograph. So congratulations to Jill, Lynn, Malcolm, myself and Ross. 2 of them were in The Age. Here's one in The Age from Jill, featuring that Nationals leader, Michael McCormick, who Jill quotes that he's not worried about what might happen in 30 years' time. You might remember that quote. In the same edition were 2 other letters from Lighter Footprints writers, Barb Fraser and Ross Hudson. So that was 3 letters in that edition. A few days later, Lynn Franks was the lead letter in The Age on our leader, Scott Morrison. What is the world? How long did Morrison think the world would wait for Australia to take climate action seriously? Following Lynn were 2 other letter writers from Lighter Footprints, Neil Wilkinson and Bill Chandler. You can see the width of those letters, double column letters. So we had 3 double column letters, one after the other in the same edition. But wait, there's more. We had another 2. So in that one edition of The Age on the 12th of February, we had 5 letters published. That's pretty good. But there's still more. In the Australian Financial Review, we were led off by Paul Keating, none other than Paul Keating. Sorry, my daughter-in-law is trying to call me. And underneath Paul Keating, we had myself, Barb, Carolyn and Malcolm in the Australian Financial Review, in a national newspaper. So you can see that we actually are having good success. It's great fun. We love doing it, and we bounce off each other with ideas. And I thoroughly recommend the Letter Writers Group to you if you like putting pen to paper. Thank you.
Wonderful, fantastic, unbelievable the way the letter writers, but always room for more people to join in, and you'll get a lot of hints along the way if that's...
How do I stop sharing?
At the top
there we
of the
go.
screen. Yeah.
Yep, got it. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Ray. We're going to rattle through this fairly quickly. Annie, are you there? Can you talk to the comms and social media group?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick spiel from me. Excuse me, the comms and social media group are working on building our community and keeping engaged online. So that includes Facebook, which is obviously a bit weird at the moment, Twitter, and we're in the process of launching an Instagram. We're a mixture of people who have experience in social media and comms, people who are excellent storytellers, and people like me who are just a bit enthusiastic. So we're all learning as we go. We're welcoming anybody with any level of experience and any level of time commitment. We can be pretty flexible. At the moment, we're working on having fortnightly meetings the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month at 6:30. But if that time doesn't suit you, we have lots of kind of side projects that are going on. So if you're interested at all, we'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Who could resist that invitation? Thank you, Annie. Joy, are you there on local government? Can't hear from Joy. We might, Joy, if you're there, I'll let you go after this next one. But David, can you?
I'm here.
Oh, sorry, Joy.
Thanks, Mick. I'm Joy Mettam, and I'm one of the two conveners for the local government group. The other is Anne Young. We've been around since about mid-2019, looking at ways to talk to our local councils, our councillors and our council officials. At this stage, we primarily focus on Boroondara, but we know that we need to do something about Whitehorse. We have fortnightly meetings, 7:30 each fortnight, and we would love to have more people involved. We research, we write, we talk, make submissions to the council, and I think this year looks like a great opportunity for us. The last government election, local government elections, completely, well, transformed Boroondara, let's say, and we've got a much more sympathetic council there, and I think we've got some opportunities to make some change there. So we would love to hear from people. As Mick said before, go to the Take Action page. You will find us there, and you will find a phone number for myself and for Anne. So come along. We're a great group. We're only small, but we're pretty active and got lots of ideas. So thanks, Mick.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Fantastic. Look, those guys are going really well. Great council election, and plenty to do. Great result in the council election, I mean. David Strang on the Energy Transition Group. David, are you there? Yep.
Yes, I am. The Energy Transition Group focuses on, I suppose, analysing changes and possible changes to the energy to industries or that cause emissions, and is made up of a combination of people with probably no industry skill but enthusiasm, and some people with fairly extensive skill from one or a number of industries. We do the analysis with a point of view of developing a position that we want to take, and then advocating on issues such as CEFC amendment, the AGL Western Port, gas. There are a number of issues, and the Victorian emissions reduction targets. We're also moving on and developing information for the community, which will assess what individuals can do to lower their footprint, carbon footprint. And we're hoping to work with the new council to promote messages, whether it's putting solar panels on or whatever. And just to make sure we haven't forgotten anyone, we've also got 1 or 2 people who focus on the agricultural sector, where it doesn't really fit into energy transition, but it seems part of the overall message that we're delivering, so we address that as well. And I think one of the tasks we're going to be looking at in the very near future is community solar in Boroondara, and if we're really bold, it would be community solar with a community battery, but we'll just have to see where we go on that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And also part of that discussion is how we can, if we do a community project, how we can, add value to people that are disadvantaged economically or socially. So how can we, bring that side of things in as well? So that's great. Thank you, David. That's go on to Take Action page, and you can find that one, the Energy Transition Working Group, among all the others as well. I'm going to go to Ken on the Speakers Working Group.
Thanks, Michael. I head up the Speakers Group at Light of Footprints. And haven't we just seen a fantastic example of a presentation tonight? And I think we should be inspired by that to get out there and have a go at it ourselves, getting the message to people, helping them to understand better just how urgent and important our action is. So we organise speaking on Light of Footprints issues to groups such as Rotary, Probus, U3A and others. And we get ideas from the group. So we welcome your ideas. So come along and join the group. We do have arrangements to provide support and training. So come along and improve your speaking skills. And who knows, you may end up speaking as well as Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Wonderful. Last not least, Lynn on the Climate Emergency Kooyong Climate Change Alliance.
Hi. This is a joint working group with the other members of the Kooyong Climate Change Alliance, which includes ACF Boroondara and Stapadani Kooyong, amongst a couple of others. So we've spent the last sort of year working on getting the city of Boroondara to declare a climate emergency, petitioning in the street. We presented that petition with something like 3,900 signatures to council. A motion was put by a very brave councillor Addis, but the motion was voted down 7-3. We're hoping with the new council there might be more hope that they will take the, I think, very important act of leadership in declaring a climate emergency as a message to the community and to council's own officers as well. So we worked on the local government campaign. You would have seen the climate scorecard that we put out in most wards. We are pressing council. We've organized meetings with individual meetings with councillors, pressing for a strong climate action plan and a climate emergency declaration. If we have a federal election, this group will likely pivot to being about a Kooyong Votes Climate campaign. So it's a bit of a bolshy group. They want to get out there and do stuff, and quite a number of very keen people who attend fortnightly meetings, which is great. Everybody's welcome to attend, and we would love to have you.
Fantastic. So look, as you can see, that's these groups are up and running. There's a place for everyone that wants to be inspired and motivated tonight by some of what Simon says and what you might have been talking to your friends about. We're at the critical point, we're at the tipping point. Australia's falling behind, so we want to be part of the big push. So come along. I'm just going to give just before we wind up, a quick spruik for our next meeting, which is on the 31st of March. So put that into your diary. It's called Gas, A Road to Nowhere. And we've got two really good speakers. We've got Bruce Mountain from the Victorian Energy Institute. I've probably mangled that a bit, and policy. advisor of the Victorian government, and we've got Tony Wood from the Grattan Institute, who co-authored, probably the best bit of work on gas nationally with Guy Dundas back in November. So that promises to be really, really good. Gas is confusing, and that's going to be a really important night with some really, great speakers. So put that in your diary. Now, just before we leave, we've spoken amongst ourselves. There's a few people on the working groups that are happy to stay back beyond 9 o'clock. We're just about to hit the leave meeting. Anyone, and this is a very open invitation, anyone who wants to just stay online, got a question, wants to say, look, I'm interested in this, where do what group might suit me, just a little bit of a chat after the meeting formally finishes. Love to have a few people stay back if you want to have a quick chat. But otherwise, feel free to leave. The meeting is closed. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again to Simon. Wonderful, Simon. It's fantastic. And thanks, everyone, for showing up tonight.